Some have succeeded, some have royally failed. And the ones that have failed, the only common thread in them has been that we didn't keep. And that data is not just a one-time thing. What you may be doing today might be helpful for several years down the line.
They're going to reduce your adoption or slow down the process, and you see more pushbacks. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Prescience AI Connect, the podcast where we deep dive into the dynamic world of artificial intelligence and its impact on business, economy, and in life in general. I'm your host, Jaydip. Each episode, we bring you AI-related news, industry insights, and enterprise AI adoption in conversation with Prescience co-founders Anirban and Shiva. Going forward, we will also invite business leaders, experts, innovators, and thought leaders in the AI space. Today, we are thrilled to have Ratish Trehan, a seasoned healthcare and business executive, joining us at the show. We will also have Shiva, one of the co-founders and CTO of Prescience. We'll be covering a wide range of topics related to AI and data and explore the roles that play in the life of a senior business executive. Let's get started. Ratish, welcome to AI Connect. I would love to have your experience shared with our viewers. But before we do that, why don't you take a few minutes to introduce yourself, share your background and your professional journey with our viewers?
Thank you so much, Jaydip, and thank you, Shiva, for getting me here. It's an absolute pleasure and honor to be with you. And the topic today is so relevant and so interesting. Not interesting as me, so pardon me if I bore you a little bit. As you said, Jaydip, my name is Ratish Trehan. I've been in the pharmaceutical industry for close to 25 years now. Majority of that has been on the commercial side, though I've handled various other functions, but my forte is running P&L. So I worked all across the world, collaborating with cross-functional teams, multicultural teams, and running P&Ls of various sizes. I've been fortunate enough to have handled pharmaceutical sales, marketing, commercial, medical, from Latin America to Japan to Scandinavia to South Africa. Worked with companies, reputed companies like Rank, and the last 10 years have been with Viatris, Miles. And as I said, a big thank you for having me here. I hope the audience finds this helpful. I'll be sharing my life experiences and what I've gone through within the pharmaceutical industry.
Thank you so much, Ratish, for this introduction. We are looking forward to have an engaging conversation. And considering the topic is AI, it's never boring. We will dive in right away. Considering your vast experience in your industry, I'm sure whether it is pharma or overall across industry, AI is gaining prominence in all businesses. And it is also becoming one of the major topics in the boardroom discussion. As a senior executive in the commercial function, what's your observation on AI in or otherwise business in general in your sector? But it's okay to even bring in a broader perspective as well.
Thanks, Jaydip. When I look at AI has been in our lives for a long time. If you look at it from your washing machine to the Google searches that you do, and we've seen it evolve. We didn't even know AI was in our washing machine. 90% of the audience would not know. So it's been there and technology has been evolving. I remember the days when we would do Google search and it didn't predict anything. Now you type one word and gives you the full sentence. So it's been there. Business has been using it, AI, for a long time, and AI has had profound impact without us even realizing. Nowadays, the hype is Gen AI, and there's a lot of new technologies that are coming around, lots of excitement being generated around that front. I didn't mention that in my introduction, but I'm an engineer, so a little bit geeky. But what I've learned in my 25 years working in the pharma industry and trying to get technology into it is that you've got to keep the why of the business up front. You've got to keep people and change management at the heart of everything. I've launched a lot of technology solutions, interventions in my business. Some have succeeded, some have royally failed. And the ones that have failed, the only common thread in them has been that we didn't keep change management on human behavior at the core. We kept technology at the core. And whenever we did that, we failed miserably. So, same, my views with AI. Very exciting space, lots of things happening. At times, it's overwhelming to keep pace with it because it's changing so rapidly and it's becoming much better, much more user friendly, much more reliable. But my advice to people who are listening is that whatever technology you use, if you don't keep people at the center, especially I'm coming from a traditional business, if you don't keep people and the purpose of your organization at the center, and instead, if you keep technology at the center, you
Yeah, I think it's interesting that the boundaries are getting merged. So AI is an area where we see both side of applications simultaneously, and we will talk about it in a minute. But before that, as a business leader, what promises does AI hold for you?
I look at the pharmaceutical industry, we've been using AI in different forms across the spectrum. If you look at some of the cases where people have used in R&D, in manufacturing, to improve the productivity of your drug discovery, there's a lot that has been used. But that's not my domain. So I'm not going to talk much about R&D, manufacturing, because there's a lot that you can do. I'm going to talk more about the commercial side and the immense potential that AI has. And going forward, there's much more. There's also hype around it. We talk about the hype aspect as well. But if you look at on the healthcare side, it can really help improve outcomes. Doctors, hospitals, HCPs, they're using a lot of AI. And we've done some pilots in my previous organization, adopting AI into diagnostics and helping doctors diagnose some very difficult conditions and cases. So massive potential on that side. Improving marketing productivity, data analytics, to use certain predictive technologies to increase the effectiveness of your sales force. One big thing on the commercial side for all pharmaceutical executives is that our time with the HCPs is very limited. You've got limited time and you've got to increase the scientific quality of discussion that your representative has with the doctor, and you've got to really add value to that. So I see a lot of applications of AI on that front where we can significantly improve the productivity of the sales and marketing.
Let me switch to Shiva at this point. Shiva, you are a practitioner, and that is exactly your bread and butter, right? What AI really offers promises for you as a practitioner?
As Ratish pointed out, there is a lot of promise, a lot of things have evolved over a period of time, and the technology itself is not new, but then the tools and the infrastructure that are emerging now definitely are making the adoption of the technology more relevant to businesses. One of the things that we have also realized, and Ratish, you hit the nail on the head when you said that it has to start with a business question, it has to start with a business problem. And while we are data scientists, and then we try to definitely help organizations adopt AI and data science techniques, we don't look at it from a technology forward approach. We look at it from a business backward approach. We look at what is the business problem and we ask, okay, what is the decision that you want to make? Let's say you are a commercial leader. Do you want to actually maximize your revenue, or do you want to maximize your profitability? And then look at data and work with the business decision or the business problem in mind, and see how data or AI tools can help you arrive at that decision that you want to make. That essentially is the right approach, I would say, rather than trying to fit a technology across a variety of business problem and try to see that can improve our businesses. Because you have to have a business centric and a people centric approach in order for their technology to succeed in that environment.
Now, talking about data, how does data play a role in your day-to-day work and in your decision making? Can you elaborate a little bit on that, your point of view?
Very interesting, a very important topic. So data is important. We know in today's age, data is gold, and how you utilize that data, how you interpret that data is critical to your success. It can be one of your key differentiators. Having said that, coming from a traditional sector, which is non-IT, non-web enabled and all that, we never realized the importance of data when we started building out, right? So sometimes for us, the challenge is that the data is in different pockets. It's not clean data. Also, being in the pharmaceutical industry, there are lots of restrictions in privacy and data concerns that we've got to take care of. You just can't do a lot. So again, I'll focus on the commercial side. So what I've seen in my experience that data is important, very important, but the quality of data that we have is not that great. And what I've realized through my experience is that companies like us spend a lot of time cleaning up that data. Humongous effort goes into that because we weren't designed when we were being built up. We weren't designed to capture data like the way these internet companies or modern age companies are doing. So we were at a back foot. Now we spend a lot of time cleaning up that data and then get exhausted and then miss out on the project. And that I've realized long time ago that that does not help, because whatever data you have is still meaningful data and correct data. What I've realized over my experience is whatever data you have, utilize that, it will tell you a story. And normally when you're facing a business problem, you have to go back to basic data and analyze it with basic tools to get inference. So for me, data is very important. What I'm trying to say is don't worry whether your data is accurate, inaccurate, and all that stuff. Keep that cleanup effort going side by side. Try to focus more on setting a system in place that captures the correct data for you. But whatever data you have, you start analyzing it. Now, if I look at an e-commerce company, the amount of data that they'll generate in an hour is equivalent to 1 year sales data for me. That's the amount of data we're talking about. But that's enough to get inference out of it. And what is more important is analyzing that data and at senior management level, how you present. So if you've got a data and you've got analysis and you presented it 100 slides, guess what the senior management is going to do? Is commission another study because we didn't understand your analysis. But if you have some data set, good, bad, you put that caveat, it's 80% clean. At least you've got 80% clean data and you've got some inference and you present it properly. That facilitates decision making. So that's my take on the data aspect.
And is there a format or a structure that you have as a best practice that you follow for maintaining your data?
Very interesting because I do not handle data directly. I'm a user of the data, but I know because we went through a lot of mergers and acquisitions, those are the norms. There's a lot of effort that was put into place to integrate data systems of both companies or whatever acquisition. The way it happened in the last 10 years, we've acquired companies every second or third year. So we just ended up just completely integrating all that data. What I've seen, and I've gone a full cycle on it, is I used to love dashboards and I've started hating dashboard because I now am in a situation where I need to have a dashboard to tell me how many dashboards do I have. And this alludes to what Shiva said, because technology, whether it's AI or analytics or AI driven analytics, has become so user friendly that even a knob like me can play around and make a balanced scorecard for myself, a dashboard for myself. So now the situation, I know Shiva and I were talking about this. I have a dashboard. I want to see that data. I click on it. By the time it's loading, I can have coffee and come back. And by that time, there's a firefighting that it has to happen. And I get deep into it and I've forgotten what it is. So that proliferation needs to be controlled. So, in our enthusiasm to present data and analyze data, I see a lot of organizations falling into the trap that they're doing too much. There are lots of enthusiastic stakeholders, so there's too much happening on that, and that needs to be controlled.
Yeah, it's interesting because, um, in my lack of it or too much of it,
Yeah.
both are problems, right?
You've said it. So I've seen organizations saying on the extreme, do nothing or do a lot. You've got to choose a path that is right for your particular organization, and don't analyze data for the heck of analyzing the data. That's also very important. What tools, technology you use. We had a classical example where we had a data set and it was brilliant data, and the dashboards, everything was beautifully designed, but it was so slow. And there were so many aspects built into it that there were 20, 30 pages, and all users wanted was the first page. 90% of us wanted just the first page. So that tells you that maybe have multiple solutions. You need not have one solution for everybody. We realized that page 9, 10, 12 were consuming a lot of data, bandwidth, and all that, which was slowing down the whole system. Some of the technology aspects I'm also coming on, and that really to increase adoption of data analytics and AI, you got to make it simple for the users. And we are all used to now, whether it's any of the Chat GPT, Copilot, or Gemini, or Google's, we want a result in milliseconds. So when I can go on that and get a result in milliseconds, and you're giving me an internal solution which takes a minute to upload, that won't work. So rather cut down the features of what you've designed internally and give lesser features, but internal. I keep on telling my development team that your benchmark is a Google search.
Yeah.
So if you design too many features and make the system slow, the users are not going to use it.
Yeah. No, I agree. And uh, one of the points that I'm making a note now here is that the user experience matters. And when we talk about user experience, it also depends on the role and the function. So bringing in that empathy from the other side when, I'm developing a dashboard, right? So it's not just the data here. It's also about the experience and the consumption pattern. And it's also the user and the use cases, right? So I think each of these factors are very important. Let me switch to Shiva now. Shiva, I'm sure this is a very dear topic to you, and there's a ton of work that you do on that space. What's your point of view on this, and how do you see the industry or the customers are managing this, the data and the overwhelming part of the data or the lack of it?
Right. One of the things, Ratish, you pointed out is the tool and technology really has to fit into the business context. What works for an e-commerce or an Amazon or a Google or an Apple does not work for an enterprise like pharma or even a CPG company where we don't deal with that volume of data, right? And absolutely, what we have seen and what we have seen it work is all these technologies from your descriptive analytics to statistical modeling to machine learning and AI are really a continuum of tools and techniques that are designed to improve decision making in an enterprise. And you have to adopt that technique which is most suited for the enterprise. And when you go to these, when you talked about dashboards, absolutely, that is a challenge we have also seen in multiple places because a lot of these tools enable end users and then even executives to create some of these dashboards very quickly. So right now, what we have seen and what we focus on is the business storyline in terms of how you may look at dashboard data, you may look at some other data, but then what is the story behind? Why is my sales falling? Or what are the kind of, for example, in your case, what are the medicines that the doctors are recommending? And what is it? What makes them recommend those medicines, let's say, to the patients versus some other scenario? Is it the rep? Is it the availability? Is it the necessity in a particular case? Right. So those are aspects that really cannot be captured in a dashboard, but it has to be captured like a business story, right? And then you can derive, that will help you make a better decision, right? So that's the aspect that we continue to focus on as well. And that's what is more successful in the projects that we execute.
So I think this is interesting that getting the feedback from businesses, the user side is extremely critical to create that experience that the data promises to deliver. And I think we will only get there as we get more and more feedback, and we are hearing that leaders like you, Ratish. So that's very helpful to know. Now, let me switch gear and ask you a question on the personal side. What are those 2 or 3 challenges that you have on your day to day work, and you wish or hope that AI can solve it for you?
That's a trick question. So I can tell you that, and if I look at strategically and very tactically, I'll break it into two things, right? Being in the healthcare industry, I alluded to that, and it's my personal ethos, and luckily, the ethos of the companies that I worked with has been aligned so far. And we've always focused on increasing access of high quality medications at affordable prices to people across the world so that we can help doctors, healthcare practitioners improve patient outcomes. Strategically, if you look at that. Now, it's a very loaded sentence. And the way my personal training has been, and the way the training has been for most of the pharmaceutical executives that I worked with in the companies that I worked with, we've always focused first on that: don't fall ill. Prevention is better than cure, right? But unfortunately, if you look at disease burdens, and they're shocking statistics, like non-communicable diseases where you've got things like diabetes, hypertension, cholesterol, cancers. Majority of the world, it's 80% of the population above the age of 40 or 50 will be suffering from that. Obviously, prevention is not working, or we would love prevention to work. Then you look at the cure aspect. One of the things that happens on the cure aspect is diagnosis is late. Diagnosis is not correct at times, but majority of the cases, diagnosis is late. By the time the patient comes, it's already too late. I think so. If AI can help on that front, that'd be massive. The second aspect is, even after diagnosis is done, treatment fall or treatment adherence rates are and they're shockingly low for various reasons. So what are the solutions for that? I wouldn't say AI, but what are the solutions for that? Because AI is just one of the tools that we have for the solution. So at a strategic level, how can we improve diagnosis and treatment rates so people live healthier lives? That's at a very strategic level. At a tactical level and a very operational level, I see a lot of my team members struggling with day-to-day tasks, or repetitive, not struggling. They do a fantastic job. Sorry, wrong word. They do a fantastic job, but a lot of work is going on unproductive thing, a repetitive thing. Simple things like working in a large organization, death by PowerPoint is a reality. You've got to make those decks. Finance team has to upload data onto a budgeting software, then got to validate that. They spend a lot of time. So on this operational front, especially for my team, how can we reduce the amount of time that they're spending on these routine tasks on data handle? It's just putting one data, and generally a lot of organizations use Excel, one Excel sheet going into one software, which is your budgeting software, then download and then goes into another software, which is your MIS software. And all of them are sitting on SAP. They just juggle with a lot of that. So can we get these routine things out of the way? So these would be the two broad buckets I would put it. One very strategic, one very operational, that we really need help on.
So that leads me to my next question, which is, in your opinion, based on where you are sitting, both functionally and as well as for even at an industry level, how do you think the organizations are ready to leverage AI optimally today? And I wanted to add another question. I'm wondering if you can address that as well. Is what kind of readiness do you think is required internally to truly leverage or optimally leverage AI for the best benefit of the organization and also for maybe personal productivity, right?
Correct. So if you look at the pharmaceutical industry, right, we are driven by a lot of rules and regulation. I generally joke a lot with all my colleagues and batchmates from my college who've gone on to the IT side. I said, if Facebook was a pharmaceutical company, they would have to research for 10 years before they put a like button. They wouldn't have been allowed to put a like button. So pharmaceutical industry issues on around data integrity, ethics, compliance are massive. Theoretically, a use case is you make a summary of a clinical article which an HCP wants, and you could summarize that and present that to the HCP. Sounds very simple to do. But the challenge with that is that who's accountable and liable for decisions made based on that? Would the pharmaceutical company be liable, or would the AI software that you use to summarize, or the person who's written the article? Because we're just providing a service. We got a request from an HCP. Hey, I've heard about this article. It's scientific. So there are lots of issues around about that which are not resolved right now. I'm sure over a period of time we'll come to that as technology changes. Also, again, from the pharmaceutical industry, data privacy issues role. We might have less data. We would like to generate less data, but that data should be secured robustly. There's a lot of data that we generate for clinical trials and R&D, which ethically cannot be given out. Even as company employees, pharmaceutical company employees, we cannot have access to that. So the company itself does not have access to that. So those needs to be sorted out. Now, coming back to what you said, are organizations ready, or how can organizations be ready? There's a lot of thing happening on AI, and Gartner came out with the AI hype cycle, and on that, that's a very famous Gartner analogy and works for all technologies. I think so. We're
Yeah.
at the
Every time a
peak
new
of
technology
Gen
comes
AI.
in, obviously they do that.
Yeah, it promises, technology promises a lot. You start using it and then you realize, hey, it's not working. I have my personal experience. I started using Bard and I wanted to do something related to asterisk obliques. I'm an asterisk obliques fan. I did that. I didn't like what it came. A week later, Bard became Gemini, and I did. And I said, that I've got to do. Let's have fun. I tried to do that again, and boom, it came up. No, because of ethical reasons, there's sensitivities I will not be able to give. And I was like, what happened within a week here? You change your name. So it's evolving. So if you look at a lot of technologies, AI and Gen AI technologies are evolving very rapidly and they're improving. Keeping pace with them can become difficult for an organization. And the organization is just not your CTO or your IT team who are abreast of that. And similarly, if you look at in companies, there'll be companies who will be innovators for a new technology. There are departments who are innovators. There are people within that who are innovators of adopting technology. Then come the early adopters. You've got those 2.5%. So I think so. I've used Gen AI left and center personally and for work as well. What I've realized that organizations are not ready right now because there's so much happening on if I look at Gen AI itself, there's so much happening on that and there's plethora of options coming out. So organizations are also confused as well. Within the pharmaceutical industry, they're taking steps. And the first thing that they're trying to solve is the data should remain within the company. It shouldn't go out. If you don't solve that for in a pharmaceutical company, then they're not going to adopt it organization-wide. Pockets individuals might utilize it. And it's a very valid concern. So that's got to be sorted. But I think so the best approach for that I've seen that's worked whenever a new technology comes out or whenever a problem comes out is get a cross-functional team. involved. Have certain early adopters who understand that technology as part of the team. Don't push the technology down people's throat. Let that technology have a solution and then it works best. At the same time, having said that, the opposite also at times works. If the leader says, I want you to use this technology and show me what it can do. So both approaches work. But I've seen the former approach works much better. You can use the latter approach just to do a demo to ignite people's thought processes and mind to attract the early innovators. But I would say organizations are not ready because the business leader also does not understand AI. And I think so a lot of AI companies have to take that blame as well. If I start talking about pharmacokinetics, pharmacodynamics, half-life, MIC 90, you won't understand. But when a lot of tech companies or AI companies come up, we've got an LLM, we've got ML. Okay, good. Keep that with you. I don't understand that jargon. So you could talk to my IT head, but you don't talk to me, or you'll give me a very esoteric business case. I'm from the palm, and these are actual examples. So I am from commercial, and this company comes and pitches how they've used Gen AI to improve R&D productivity. Oh, brilliant. I love it. I understood it, but not for me. So I think so for organizations to be ready, they've got to look at encourage early innovators, not early adopters, the innovators. Encourage people to understand that technology or encourage people who know that technology to come up as business leader. I'm interested in this area, but I pushed myself to learn it as well. Do pilots, but don't do too many pilots. Don't confuse the people. There will be skeptics in an organization, but that's all right. But do some pilots, use some test cases, pick up one or two areas where this can really solve a business problem. And once the business leaders see this contributing positively, then the adoption increases. Long-winded answer. There are lots of things there, but I hope I addressed your question.
Yeah, no, you are absolutely right. I think keep going back to the word empathy, which is important to understand that one size doesn't fit all, right? I think the other aspect I often see is that hugely underrated in the technology adoption, especially in the enterprise space, that part of it is also about change management. And I think people, at least not very vocal about it, right? Honestly, it's a much broader subject. And this is subject to change management as well. Your team or your function is used to do a certain thing in a certain way. What my incentives to change that, and what is the ROI, and what point of time I can see that? But I think, and at this point, I think it would be interesting to take Shiva's point of view in terms of how do Shiva use that within the industry or customers that you are interacting with. The readiness challenge, right, continues to remain as an important topic, and we continue to speak about it. Your take on what is a readiness assessment as of now, and what do you think are required to be truly ready to leverage AI in full potential?
Sure. So one of the things that I also wanted to pick is data is not just a one-time thing. And Ratish, you talked about preventive medicine or efforts to prevent diseases, right? And I have seen and I've read about is most successful preventive or predictive efforts around a particular ailment are built on several years of longitudinal data collection around various patients and diverse patients, etc. And so it's not a one-time thing. For example, today a doctor entering the correct symptoms and let's say the BP values for a patient might be useful several years down the line for another patient. And we saw that, and when we did a project with Pune Municipal Corporation during COVID days, was we were trying to track the comorbidities of patients, and then what is the kind of drugs or prescriptions that they were given, to their survival rates. And then it may not have helped that particular instance, but then the data collection helped few weeks down the line for doctors to really diagnose and put a particular person coming into the system in a particular category and then give the appropriate medication for that person. So that's one point, that data is not just a one time thing. What you may be doing today might be helpful for several years down the line to actually predict the outcome for a particular patient. So that's one thing that organizations have to realize, and then we have to keep at it. And the second thing is about automation and how some of these technologies uh, are helping people. So one aspect of that from a change management point of view will also help is look at AI, look at interventions from a technology point of view, which are augmenting and not completely automating the effort, because there are very complex business processes, complex decisions that people will have to make. And can we simplify that using AI and automation rather than trying to end automate, right? That's, if you keep that perspective and not bring in again a technology which will 100% reduce cost or automate everything end to end, then change management also becomes easier, because the people on the front line can see, okay, so this technology is helping me rather than trying to eliminate me, right? And then you actually buy into the adoption of that technology, which actually improves the outcomes for the customer or the patient or whoever is the target segment, all right, for that particular intervention.
No, absolutely, Shiva. In fact, I want to add to that, Jaydip. It's very important that change management is part of the design process. When you're designing, it should be the number one, the number thing that you have. What's the business need? What's the business problem that you're solving is always there. That's why you started. Then should be the change management and human dynamics. Then should be technology. And what Shiva you said is so right. I've had examples where a simple workflow which comes for approval, you've got an Excel sheet used to come on Outlook to me for approval, and we would approve it, and it had to be stored. That decision had to be stored. That was the problem. So, lo and behold, workflow is designed, and then somebody's got to log into a system and input everything, and then it comes to me and approve. It was unmitigated disaster. I said no, because who asked you to automate it end to end? We just wanted to record that final email approval. But we have that mindset that we've got to do everything. And Shiva, brilliant what you said. AI could be the smartest solution for a part of that problem. So use it only on that part of the problem. If you can do a calculation mentally, do it. You don't need a calculator. If a calculator can do it better than Excel, use a calculator. If Excel can do it better than the calculator and faster, cheaper, then use it. And only if you are not satisfied by all those three, then you go to AI. But if you're going to use AI to tell you what 2 plus 2 is equal to, that's a waste of resources. You're going to spend much more doing that. And I've seen that's where organizations falter, that they try to do everything end to end. And the other thing that resonated a lot with the CTOs that I worked with is that they put all this load on the IT head. So the IT head is supposed to design your process, optimize the process, as well as implement change management. No, that's not the way it should be. It should be a cross-functional team. And if you've got 10 team members, one person should be from IT. But I've seen that burden comes on the IT folks. And guess what? Most of the IT folks, the senior level, I'm not talking about the senior level, they're very advanced and they can think through, but majorities at the middle, lower level would be techies or software developers. They'll just code and give it to you. I think so. That's another problem that I've seen in most companies.
Yeah, and I think I wanted to tap into that aspect in terms of how do you think a project can be successfully implemented? More importantly, the adoption is useful or done more rapidly. How should IT and LOBs work together? And I think partly you have already addressed that. I think it again goes back to the same point of understanding the use cases, understanding, don't just do that for the sake of or for heck of it, but essentially augment, like Shiva, you mentioned, augment AI where it is necessary, but don't force fit into the entire workflow. That's probably is only going to reduce your adoption or slow down the process, and you see more pushbacks, right? So at this point of time, let's switch gear, and I wanted to check with you. Gen AI is actually on top of our mind, right? And there is so much buzz, and you have mentioned also on the hype cycle, it is right there on top. We are almost given a belief that there is nothing that Gen AI cannot do. But I want to decipher that. I want to get down to the level of what a business leader should be looking at or expecting from Gen AI, maybe more both from business side as well as the personal side of their work, and even making life better, because our work is actually not completely separate from our life, and how Gen AI can play, you think, an important role in that.
Yeah, brilliant. So I'll start with the personal aspect first and my own personal experiences and my journey through that. When Chat GPT was launched, I like, what's this? Got hooked onto it. And I saw that phase where, you know, and then all the others, Chat GPT, all its versions to version 4 and Copilot, Gemini, Bard, God knows there were so many others that came. I used all of them. But what I realized is it was fun, right? But it was not productive. I was doing new things and I was learning. And I gave you that example of asterisks, right? Bard gave me something which I didn't like, but Gemini gave me a message, ethical message out of ethics, and confused me. So I realized that I was learning how to use those tools. And it was fun to see how the technology was talking to me as a human. But in hindsight, I spent 8 hours just having fun with it. And I remember distinctly when you could start generating images, it was like, wow, that was so cool. Till I went to a conference where I got to know how much energy that one image that I was having fun with required. It could power a house for a week, power the lighting of that house for a week. I was like, no, that's too energy intensive so I stopped using it that way. Gen AI holds a lot of promise. It's a technology that is being evolved. I don't think so. We've seen the full scope and potential of what Gen AI can do. We're scratching on the surface. So the technology is going to evolve much more than what we've seen. Like all technology, we've seen virtual reality at one point in time was touted to be the next big thing and take over everything. It happened? No. So it's a very exciting technology. It holds a lot of promise. And my only recommendation is don't put the technology first. Don't try to put the cart before the horse. It's a fantastic technology. It has a lot of promise. It has a lot of applications, right? And if used like correctly, it can do a lot of good. Like Shiva was saying, I came across a research in elderly people, osteoarthritis, which is degeneration of your joints, knee joints. You've got knee replacement surgeries. Important elderly people fall down, and then you've got hip replacement surgeries, which are painful for them and going through surgery at that age. So there are researchers who are working on how to predict fall pattern, how to prevent those fall patterns, how to design homes and lighting to prevent those fall patterns. And if you fall, what are the chances of you falling? Can you give medication later on to help you reduce the impact of the fall before you get on surgery? Gen AI has massive scope on, right? I've just picked one aspect of that, but it should be solving a problem or part of the problem. But if we say, no, we're going to use Gen AI to solve the problems of the world, no. It can be one tool that you utilize. Also, the whole thing about Gen AI is it'll replace people. Nah, I don't believe it. I won't. Like when Canva came, people said when Canva came out, my number of PowerPoint presentations did not go down. Usage of Adobe software did not go down. Canva came out with another set of users. This is the same thing when computers were launched. It was touted that people will lose jobs. Did that happen? No, it created jobs. So it's an evolution of technology. It's very exciting. I would encourage people to get to know about it, not to be afraid about it. Uh, Use it judiciously. At the start, you'll have fun. You have to have fun to getting to understand. You'll go through your frustration. You won't get what it's giving out to you. You'll have to learn how to prompt it. And similarly, it's for organizations as well. After you sort out all your data ethics in pharmaceutical industry, data, compliance, regulatory norms, organization wide, you've got to do that. And then encourage a few users, the early innovators, to start utilizing it, be familiar with the technology, and then encourage them to consider it as one of the tools that you have to unlock value or profit.
Agreed. Agreed. I wanted to ask you, what are your favorite use cases, maybe on the personal side, and what tools or technologies you use for Gen AI in your own life?
Yeah, so that's interesting. So a few things where I've used to reach out. As I said, I handle diverse geographies and different cultures. So how can you give that one message which can resonate with that culture? Using Gen AI to give that message across. Like, I came across a TED talk, and it's a personal experience as well. English is funny. We use all English differently. So if you say, I broke my arm, for you and me, it's fine. But for certain cultures, they'll think you're mad. You took and broke your arm. Literally, why would you do that? So I've used an AI to give my messages, and I handle 1,000+ people, how to give that message, but constructed in a manner that culture or that function would be able to understand that. I have had immense success on that front. Another thing I realized is that there was a point of time when I was using all of these, whether it's ChatGPT, Copilot, or Gemini now, instead of simple search, because the way you interacted with Gen AI was more natural, and the results also were better. Some tool was better than the other tool. It took some learning to figure out what that is. I found ChatGPT very helpful in documentation, improving your storyboards. Seeing Gemini throwing up much better search results. It's much more updated. I found Copilot very creative. So whenever it's some creative designs or images, Copilot scored much better. So personally, I've played around a lot with a lot of those. I even tried some slide building softwares and images, but then I just couldn't. I just couldn't catch up with the plethora of things that were happening. So now it's just restricted to these.
I think, like you mentioned, most importantly, you need to have fun with it, right? Shiva, what are your favorite use cases or tools that you use or technologies related to Gen AI for your personal use, maybe, or even your business use?
Yeah, from a personal perspective, I find some of these tools very useful to get started, let's say, writing something or creating the PowerPoint deck. So just to give a start, right? So that's one of the use cases that I have seen. I have used it extensively for. And then the other aspect is bringing together multiple sources of information and stitching a story. So that's again an aspect that I've used times. And I'm also a huge fan of open source. So I think some of the work that Investral are doing will define a lot of these usage of these foundational technologies going forward. And I also see Google and Microsoft more focusing on the use cases. So I think it's going to be an interesting field now because the technology or the base technology is laid out, and then now we are more going on to the exciting journey of discovering some of the use cases. So that's going to happen, and in the next 1 year or so, that's where the action is going to be, I feel.
Yeah, I think technology companies largely have been successful in inducing some of these new technologies, Gen AI, for example, before that we have seen for this whole social thing, right? How it has induced behavior or certain actions by embedding the technology into products. And I think Gen AI, we see that now started to get embedded in like Microsoft Copilot and other things, where we will see that it is going to be very pervasive in the way they function and become part of our day-to-day work life. I think the other thing that is also going to be more popular in the way popularizing Gen AI is going to be agent-driven, right? So there are going to be a lot of these use cases that we're going to see in the coming days where we'll have agent for everything. And some of it is
Correct.
going to be augmented probably, right? And I'm sure
Yes.
there'll be a lot more things coming on that front. Just the last part, I wanted to quickly take your thoughts while you are here, Ratish, is, and it's more on the serious side, right? And that's where we want to wrap up. Do you think AI is a threat to any specific industry or a function, or will it is it going to make jobs and roles more redundant, or it's basically only going to aid into better productivity, faster progress, and scale, and so on?
Interesting. I think so. I alluded that to it slightly earlier. It's a typical reaction when something new comes up, which is exciting. It's scary as well, right? Scary and exciting on both sides. Two
That's the
sides of
thrill,
a
right?
coin. Yeah, it's the thrill and it's scary. So I think the way that cycle, I personally don't think so. It's gonna take jobs or human roles away. At the same time, it's also not going to. There's a famous meme that came out. I thought Gen AI would do my dishwashing and vacuum cleaning, and I would do the poetry, but now it's the other way around. Gen AI is doing poetry, and I'm still doing my vacuum. That's also not what's gonna happen. Gen AI never promised that. All that stuff. It's a new technology. Definitely, it's an exciting technology. It has the potential of unleashing or unlocking a lot of value, sorting a lot of problems. It will go through that cycle. It's at the hype, it will go down. It does not promise what it delivers. And then we'll have the real use cases where it significantly adds value. I personally don't believe that it's going to make people redundant. Yes, I've heard a lot from the software industry folks that ChatGPT can code better than two coders. Yes, that's going to happen, but then you'll start doing different things. So there is always reskilling that has to happen. And in the tech industry, the reskilling has been massive. I'm from the generation where computers were just introduced. So there was MS-DOS, and then there was Basic, then Visual Basic, C, C++. Those are the names that I remember. And now you're talking about God knows how many languages come. So it's another part of technology, and people have evolved and adapted and learned and reskilled themselves to the new technology. So it's a new technology. It will require reskilling of certain resources. They need to be reskilled on this. It's not that the old technology will completely be buried. It will still be relevant, but there'll be more use cases, test cases coming out. And for all you know, in another 4 years, there's something which is a Gen AI beater that comes around. It's bound to happen. There will be a new technology which will say, here's the XYZ that's come out. It's going to kill Gen AI. It's bound to happen. It's bound to happen sooner than later. So it's an evolution that we're going. It's a never stopping change process, change cycle. So I don't think so people should be concerned a lot about it. I think so focus should be on leveraging the positive aspects of this technology, what it can do. There are lots of use cases. Like I talked about the elderly, there are use cases in education. There are use cases in healthcare. It can unleash a lot of value. And I'm sure people are working. I'm not aware. You guys will be. I'm sure they're working on technologies which will beat Gen AI in the next book.
Great. So, on that positive note, we are going to wrap up this edition of AI Connect. At a high level, the key summary is that Gen AI and AI in general promises to be one of the most influencing force of probably our lifetime, and we are here to see how things progress. But it will be up to our imaginations and use cases. It's going to take, hopefully, it's going to make our life better. It's going to augment and help us to be more productive, offer more quality work, and at the end, help businesses grow. That is a fundamental, sort of driver of at least bringing that piece of technology within the enterprise for adoption. Thank you so much for your time, Ratish, with us, and thank you for sharing some valuable insights, both from your professional experiences as well as from your personal background. And with that, we will wrap up this session. Shiva, thank you for your inputs from the business side, from the practitioner point of view. And we will continue to speak regarding different parts of AI, its application use cases, the adoption challenges, the impediments, and so on. But for now, today, we are going to take adieu. And thank you so much. Do join us again in our next episode. With that, thank you very much. And we'll wrap up here.